Bartimaeus, a blind man, the son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. On hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he kept calling out all the more, "Son of David, have pity on me." Jesus stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up, Jesus is calling you." He threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus. Jesus said to him in reply, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man replied to him, "Master, I want to see." Jesus told him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I want to see is one of the lines that we heard today. I want to see. And can you imagine not being able to see? You could hear, you could touch, you could taste, but you couldn't see. You couldn't see perhaps the fall colors, the Grand Canyon. You couldn't see the unique facial expressions of your loved one. And no one has ever found a cure for blindness, right? And you might be able to get some lost hearing back, but if you are blind, like a friend of mine, good luck. You're stuck. You might as well get used to it, right? And I'm not talking now about the sight that can be improved by cataract surgery or laser surgery. I'm talking about the real deal. Total, complete blindness. The blindness that comes from injury, or perhaps the blindness that came to you at birth. And it's the type of blindness that Bartimaeus had. And today's gospel drama shows the great itinerant preacher, Jesus of Nazareth, doing the unthinkable thing and healing him of his blindness. He did something that absolutely no one had ever done before. And this action of Jesus puts him in a league all of his own. And people who saw it were rightfully astonished, completely baffled by it. You have got to be kidding me. Bartimaeus, old Barty, can see again? Can you imagine that scene? I tried to imagine that scene, the scene of today's gospel. And as Mark recounts the scene today, I was also struck by the effort, the bravery, and the kind of reckless go-for-broke action of Bartimaeus, his faith. And Bartimaeus' effort reminds me of those images. Have you ever seen those images in a bunch of scattered things, and when you look at this thing for a while, you have to stare at it for a while, but then all of a sudden you see something. I'm not sure what the name of that is. So it reminds me of that. You have to fix your eyes on it for a while. You have to make the effort and sit still and look at it, and then you see. And don't ask me to explain how all of a sudden I saw the image. Is it because I have great powers of concentration? I don't think so. It just happens. The hidden image suddenly appears. And they don't tell you beforehand what you're going to see. Just keep looking with faith at it, and then you will see. Now, is that image that I'm seeing a figment of my own personal imagination? No. Is the image really there? Yes. It is there. Has it always been there, but I didn't see it? Yes. Don't ask me how. I was blind to it, but now, for some reason, I can see it. And brothers and sisters, I think we need to honestly admit that our faith in God is a matter of being given the capacity to see things and understand things that we couldn't before, that others can't. We are like the blind Bartimaeus. We are given a new capacity to see where we couldn't. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. And we can't pat ourselves on the back and say that we are fully responsible for being able to see our faith. I think the very most that we could say, the very most, is that we tried hard to see. We stared at the image for a while, and then we saw. Our sight was a gift to us. But of course, we had a part to play, right? And what do we Christians see now? We see this book up here, this book of the Gospels and the Bible, as almost like a palpitating, living word that actually speaks to us personally. And we see Jesus emerging from this Bible not just as a great, brilliant moral teacher who went around doing nice things, but we see him now as the actual Son of God himself. Someone absolutely unique and exalted. Someone who could heal blind people in a totally other league than Muhammad or Buddha or Confucius or Bob Dylan or even Oprah. We can now see weakness and defeat turned into strength and victory. And we see that crucifix, that path, paving a way for us, kind of making the royal highway for us to heaven, to the pearly gates of heaven. Follow me, I will take you there, he says. We see Jesus now himself present in the Blessed Sacrament, in the bread and wine at this Mass. We see him in that tabernacle, we feel him, and we see him in that tabernacle over there. We now see the image and likeness of God in every human person, the person sitting next to you, every single person in this space today. Each person uniquely manifesting something of God, his creativity. And many of us are like the blind Bartimaeus. We are sitting by the side of the road and we can hear things going on around us. We can hear others talking about the things that they see. We can hear other Christians talking about Jesus and how much he means to them. But we don't quite see or understand what they are talking about. Perhaps some have never made the effort that the blind Bartimaeus made. The effort to sit in the hot sun on the side of the road and wait for Jesus. The effort of raising his voice and calling out over and over. The effort of not giving up when others ridicule him. The effort of getting up and running to Jesus, throwing aside his heavy cloak, that which hindered him to be able to run faster. The audacity of going for broke and asking Jesus for the moon. Jesus, I want to see. Don't just heal my boo-boo. I want to see. I think I've just given a sort of spiritualized view of this story, right? And I'm convinced that everything that I've just said is true. Jesus wants us to see all the spiritual stuff. He wants us to see the more important spiritual realities, the spiritual realities that many around us deny. Or if they don't outright deny the spiritual realities, they just simply live as if those realities don't exist. But here's another aspect to this story. And listen, Jesus healed Bartimaeus' body. he healed his flesh and blood. He made an important body part work again. He had compassion and pity for human bodies that get broken and deteriorate and perhaps sag. He seemed interested in not just talking, but fixing our bodies, not just our minds and our spirits. So, brothers and sisters, I think this fact points to something big. The fact that the Son of God, the one who could do absolutely anything he wanted, the one who created the world from scratch, the fact that he chose to give physical sight back to Bartimaeus is an indication, I believe, that our future destiny involves a restoration of our bodies too, not just our minds. In fact, you guys might know that definition of a human being is a being that's comprised of body and spirit together. The body manifests the spirit. They go together. And we are not angels who are pure spirit. And if you've never seen Satan, the fallen angel Satan, it is because he doesn't have a body. But we must admit that Jesus didn't heal everyone's broken body, and that he came in contact with a lot of people who were broken physically. Yes, he healed Bartimaeus' eyes, and he physically heals folks in our own day and age, but not all, right? And not always many. One reason, perhaps, is that people don't really ask like Bartimaeus asked to be healed. We don't believe that God can heal us physically. God doesn't do that stuff anymore, right? Wrong. I think we as a church need to ask more for physical healings. I am convinced that if we would see a lot more physical healings if we asked for them more. And perhaps there are some people here who actually have a gift of healing, and God wants to use you to physically heal other people. And a lot of us have never got ourselves into a position like Bartimaeus got himself into, where we could ask the great healer, or to hear the great healer say to us, "What do you want me to do for you?" But I think the greater reason why Jesus doesn't always heal every single boo-boo or every single broken part of our body is related to our lack of sight. We don't see the bigger picture that God sees. We don't see that our human lives are but a blip on the screen compared to eternity, where we will experience complete restoration for a very, very long time. We don't see the royal path that Jesus took, that path is sometimes the path that we temporarily need to make. He temporarily took that path, and we as well need to do that sometimes. Sometimes that path is a path of weakness, of brokenness, and seeming defeat. And we don't realize how much God is actually deeply loving us when he doesn't answer our prayers in the way that we think that he should answer them. For a number of years, a long time ago, I was intensely attracted to a certain lady. I was certain that she was the one that God was giving me to marry. And oh, how patiently I waited for those stars to align. And I was so holy back then. What spiritual patience I showed in waiting for her. It was more than a year. But then the unthinkable happened. The stars never aligned, and she was not coming into my orbit. And it took a while for this dream, my dream, to finally come crashing and burning down to earth. And then at some point after things had settled, I met my future wife, Rachel. and there were fireworks, and we were smitten, and the rest is history. And part of the fireworks actually happened up in Aiken, Minnesota at a barn dance of all places, a polka barn dance of all places. But here was the huge takeaway for me. Here is the huge lesson that I've never forgotten out of that. I learned that I was partially blind, that I didn't see the big picture. I didn't see that, in fact, Rachel was the gift, the amazing gift that God wanted to give me, not the other one. You see, God knew exactly what I needed. I wasn't aware of what exactly I needed. I thought I was. So I'd like to finish these words with an appeal perhaps to Bartimaeus, if he's a saint, I'm not sure. I think we can emulate him in some ways, and I'd like to ask him for two things, and perhaps you might ask for these same two things. Let's ask him, St. Bartimaeus, for help in making the effort, like he did, to get in front of Jesus so that we can hear those same words that he heard. What do you want me to do for you? And the second thing, let's ask him, as we stare at Jesus like he did, let's ask him that we too could receive the gift of sight.